Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session. I heard it's one of the most popular sessions in the conference. Thank you for coming here. So welcome to this session. It's keeping up with the next revolution, how Prabowo's Indonesia can thrive in the world of artificial intelligence, quantum computing, robotics, and biotech. This session is held in partnership with Universitas Jayabaya. My name is Amy, and I am honored to be your moderator today. Having recently graduated from Columbia University, now I work at Chalfont Australia, working on initiatives on online safety. As one of the proud fellow of FPCI Women in Foreign Policy 2024, I'm very passionate about leveraging technology for equitable development, and that's why I'm very excited to be here. Now we are gathering for this very critical topic, and we have here an exceptional experts here from various sectors, which is a brilliant setting in the organizers part. And they will share their insights and help us explore how Indonesia can not only adapt, but also lead in this transformative era. To set the stage, I would now like to welcome the Minister of Communication and Digital Affairs, Bu Mutia Hafid, to deliver her keynote speech. Time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Honorable Vice Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology of Indonesia, Professor Stella Christie. Founder and Chairman of the Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, who's also a good friend of mine, Mr. Dino Patijala. Not only a good friend, he is one of the reasons why I can stand right here before you, because when I was as a journalist abducted in Iraq in 2005, Pak Dino was the one who knocked on Mr. President SBY at that time to knock on his door to make appeal for my release. Thank you again, Pak Dino. We'll never forget that. Chief Executive of Infocom Media Development Authority from Singapore, Mr. Lee Chun Hong. Chief Legal and Privacy Officer at Tools for Humanity, Mr. Damian Kiran. Professor at the Department of Political Science at National Cheng Chi University, Mr. Chung Min Sai. Our moderator, Mrs. Ami. Ibu Dewi Fortuna, to mention your name, also my senior. And a lot of other seniors, professors, ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon. I'm delighted to be here at this forum with our fellow policymakers, researchers, industry leaders, students, and also colleagues from public and private sector. It's an honor to address you today as the keynote speaker on a topic of immense importance, which is how Indonesia can thrive in the world of artificial intelligence, quantum computing, robotics, and biotech. These transformative technologies are rapidly shaping not only the present of Indonesia, but also hold the key to Indonesia's future. As we know, the global technological landscape is undergoing rapid transformation, presenting Indonesia with a unique opportunity to become a major player in digital economy. A 2023 PwC study projects exponential growth in global data consumption, driven by data-intensive technologies like VR and online gaming. Over the past few years, positive developments have been seen in Southeast Asia countries that are progressive and advancing in the utilizations of digital technology. Based on the AI Readiness Index in Southeast Asia, Indonesia in 2023 placed fourth place after Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand. This trend, coupled with a projected $366 billion contribution of AI to Indonesia's GDP by 2030. This places the nation on the edge of digital revolution, indicated by surging data consumption and widespread of AI adoption. To fully capitalize on this digital revolution, Indonesia needs to embrace a broader spectrum of technological advancements. Those are crucial for accelerating productivity growth and also enhancing national competitiveness. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, to remain competitive in this game-changing landscape, Indonesia must be proactive and also ready to adopt these future emerging technologies. On the journey towards Indonesia Emas 2045, the year 2034 will mark a point of no return for Indonesia to achieve high income status by the year 2038. During these years, the national GDP per capita is 3 times larger than the GDP per capita in 2023. But this is based on one very important assumption, which is that the disparities must be overcome through leveraging digital technologies to drive productivity. Thus, the next 5 years are critical in determining the direction and pace of Indonesia's progress. For your information, ComDG has released the Digital Indonesia Vision 2045, which provides a roadmap for leveraging technology to achieve Indonesia's policy directions and common goals, including the President's vision of 8% economic growth. And with the right collaboration, we believe Indonesia can become a digital economy by 2045, a leading digital economy by 2045. Now moving on to the next slide. I feel that there is a need for me to remind this respectable forum that emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and even quantum computing come with a profound responsibility. On the global stage, organizations like UNESCO are laying the groundwork for ethical AI development, while the UN is calling for a global digital compact to ensure that technological advancement will benefit all humanity, bridging the digital divide and promoting responsible human-centered governance. However, beneath these global aspirations, a fierce competition simmers. Singapore, with its AI Verify framework, focuses on trust and transparency. China prioritizes social stability through strict regulations and restrictions. Brazil emphasizes security and fundamental rights. The US champions human rights protection and innovation. And Europe, with its landmark AI Act, leads the charge in human-centric AI, prioritizing fundamental rights and non-discrimination. And thus, Indonesia must carefully navigate and balance the opportunities and challenges of the emerging technologies while upholding its national values and protecting its citizens. The journey requires a focus on meaningful digitalization through strategic knowledge and also technology. To support that, we focus on 3 Ps, which is policy, people, and platform. First, policy. Policy aims to bridge policy gaps that provide legal certainty without limiting innovation potential. Secondly, people. People focuses on human resources development, especially enhancing digital skills. One example of this is that the Ministry of Communication and Digital Affairs is collaborating with industries, universities, and associations in the Digital Talent Scholarship or DTS program. And thirdly, platform. Platform will focus on creating diverse technological adoptions that encourage collaboration among stakeholders to establish an inclusive AI ecosystem. Ladies and gentlemen, let me also quote the President's statement in Peru during the high-level APEC meeting, in which President Prabowo stated that the tremendous breakthroughs in technology demand that leaders be more wise, be more patient, be more accommodating, because the power of technology can bring significant progress to human life. But at the same time, the power of technology can also destroy human life very fast. And therefore, he always chose the path of collaboration, engagement, communication, negotiation. He mentioned that, yes, we have to uphold and live by common laws, by international rules, but we must also have common understanding of everybody's interests. Now to conclude, I would also like to say that it's clear that Indonesia is now standing at a very pivotal moment in the history. The rapid advancement of technology presents both opportunities and significant challenges. To navigate this evolving landscape successfully, Indonesia must, again, embrace a proactive and strategic approach for creating a meaningful transformation. I see that the FPCI forum today, and I appreciate this forum very much, but as the first step in continuous dialogue through various forums, where we can address strategic issues and collaboratively develop a more comprehensive and inclusive digital transformation. The journey ahead will demand collaboration, foresight, and a commitment to ethical and responsible development. But the potential rewards are immense, and I believe together we can ensure that Indonesia does not only adapt to the digital age, but also will thrive in it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your very inspiring opening remarks. Now, I would like to invite Her Excellency and also the speakers for a picture together, and Pak Dino as well. Can we please be here, photographer? Here. Thank you very much. Once again, thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your very inspiring remarks that have set the stage for today's discussion. Now, let's begin officially our panel discussion. I would like to invite our very inspiring speakers and panelists. Firstly, Her Excellency Professor Stella Christie, Vice Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology of Indonesia. Welcome, Ibu. Next, Mr. Lu Chun Hong, Chief Executive of Infocom Media Development Authority. Next, Mr. Damien Kiran, Chief Legal and Privacy Officer at Tools for Humanity. And last but not least, Dr. Chung Min Sai, Professor at the Department of Political Science at National Tsinghua University. A very warm welcome for our panelists. It's been it's an honor for me to also be moderating. And as we can see, we have a full house here, signaling the optimism of AI revolution in Indonesia. To start the discussion, each speaker will have 5 minutes for introductory remarks. And for your remark, I invite everyone to also share your initial insights on 2 things. Keeping up with the theme as well. So the first one is, as you know, AI and the emerging technologies have the potential to revolutionize everything, but only if we navigate them wisely, right? But Indonesia has yet to establish itself as a significant player. What do you see as the critical steps Indonesia should take to not only survive, but also thrive in the global AI competition? And secondly, I am also very curious whether competition is the only path forward. Her Excellency earlier have mentioned about collaboration, right? So the 2 things that I'd like to hear is about Indonesia's situation itself and the next steps, and the global landscape. I hope it's clear. Then we can start with Professor Stella Christie. You have your 5 minutes.
Thank you, everyone. Such a pleasure to see all of you here today. Thank you for coming, and thank you for inviting me, Pak Dino. It's a great thing to be here. On these two topics, what is Indonesia's position right now, and how do we compare Indonesia's positions or situate Indonesia's positions in the global world? Well, the first thing that we know with a very remarkable evidence is that Indonesia is an extremely strong user of all kinds of digital and emerging technologies, right? So if we look at from the percentage of usage, the percentage of ownership of all kinds of digital technologies, we're usually like leading in the world. So this is our asset. It is also our responsibility. So compared to the rest of the world, we have a very significant advantage of mass of usage. That's a very important point. And on the second thing about what is it that we have to do, I think when I look at the situation, it's very clear that what we have to do is to really think strategically about where do we want to be and how do we actually nurture this very big asset. Again, the very big asset is about the people. And the fact that Indonesia is extremely ready to actually do a leap forward into the digital usage. I mean, we already are #1 biggest users in a lot of like digital things. So this readiness, how do we actually equip this readiness? I think that is really the challenge that we are facing right now. How do we equip the readiness so that readiness is not just pure usage, but it is actually going to come up with innovations that will bring advantages, that will bring growth to our country. And I think the key solution to this is to have a system, an ecosystem that really let everybody thrives and be able to think creatively and innovatively. So I think on the question of competition, which is sort of like on the last point, we do have to compete. But of course, within that competition, we also need to collaborate. You can collaborate so that you can actually win within the competition. That's a very important key point. I think the power of the youth is very critical. I see that a lot of excitement among the youth for digital usage, and it is a big responsibility, however, about how we can create an ecosystem that make use of this big power of mass usage and digital technology. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. That remarks reminds me of that scene in Spider-Man, you know, with great power comes great responsibility, right? Yes, please, Mr. Liu.
It's okay. Hi, selamat siang, and it's great seeing everybody. Of course, Ibu Mutia, it's a great pleasure. Pak Dino, and of course to my esteemed panelists, a great pleasure to be here. You can sense the energy in the room, and I can sense the energy from all the young people here, and it gives me great optimism about the future. I think the topic here, when we talk about technology, is really a topic about the future. It's not so much technology per se. But I think the topic here was tech revolution. So maybe if I can just share a few thoughts and take a step back. Why is this tech revolution so powerful? Because it is going to change structural drivers in two key ways. I think first is just the sheer scale of and the intensity of the impact. I think technology, the growth in the digital economy is 2.5 times that of the regular economy. Globally, that has been growing at approximately 7%. And if you do the math, that means that the digital economy has doubled over the past 10 years. So it's just that breathtaking intensity of the impact as far as technology and what it means for the future. The reason is because increasingly software is a lot easier to do, because at the core, digitalization is about software. And when you do it at the software level and not at the hardware level, the fundamental rate of change increases. And that is the first structural driver that technology is pushing us towards the future. The second structural driver is not just the intensity, but the breadth of its scope. We call it a horizontal because, some technologies may be in a particular vertical. Maybe you say a battery is in a vertical. But digitalization impacts all sectors, from construction to healthcare to F&B to retail. And that is a tide that uplifts all boats. And that is structural. A famous VC, venture capitalist, actually this is A16Z, had a famous phrase that software will eat the world. And I think there's a lot of truth in that because it is that structural tide that will lift all boats. I just wanted to put that as context because there's increasing recognition internationally that digitalization will bring about or help bring about effective change. The UN has Sustainable Development Goals, but for the first time this year, they recognize the Global Digital Compact as a key catalyst and enabler to drive that effective change from everything from hunger to education to equality for gender. So I just want to put that as context of what that actually means for all countries and what the young people can do as far as bracing themselves for that future for both Indonesia as well as all countries around the world. If I were to quickly touch then on the idea of collaboration versus competition, the reality as we look at the world around us is geopolitical contestation around technology will increase. This is the world as it is, not the world as we wish it to be. And the question is, how do we react and how do we manage? To say that the human race doesn't have competition, I think is unrealistic. But I think within that, how do you manage the competition? How do you have certain rules and norms around it? I think are extremely key. For example, I think Ibu Mutia just now talked about, when it talks about AI, there is a lot of competition around AI, but I think there's a common consensus that AI safety, AI governance, it's a humanity good, and that it is very important for all countries, be it the US, China, EU, ASEAN and Southeast Asian countries together to set some of these rules and norms together to make sure that the competition is managed. But there's huge space as far as collaboration is concerned. And I think you don't have to look any further than within Southeast Asia. Within Southeast Asia, we've had many years of collaboration. There's this thing called the ASEAN Digital Ministers Meeting. And within the ASEAN Digital Ministers Meeting, there are many concrete things. For example, I think Indonesia is leading a track as far as how do you help digitalize small and medium-sized enterprises in the rural areas. And this is in collaboration with other like-minded ASEAN countries, including Singapore. And I believe the EU, Japan, India, are all part of this. There are other initiatives around how do you bring broader access as far as connectivity is concerned. At the ITU, the Broadband Commission in which I sit, the idea is how do you bring that meaningful universal connectivity is all key. So I think the idea of collaboration, even though there's competition, I think is key to bring us forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. Mr. Diamankiran, please.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say a very big thank you to Pak Dino and the Minister, and frankly, the folks in Jakarta for hosting us. This is my second time in Jakarta just in the last 2 months, and every time I am here, I am filled with a vibrancy and sort of drive to innovate, and it's inspiring, frankly. And even this as a policy-based event is just astonishing. I travel the world and I attend events like this often. I can tell you most of them do not have young people who attend them like this to engage in these debates. And so it's honestly a pleasure to enjoy this. I think I want to be very respectful as a visitor to Indonesia to suggest ideas or what should be done to change things. But I think the largest thing that stands out, and it's actually something the minister said, is people, investing in people. And that comes in all forms, whether it's the policymakers, the technologists, the education to be able to compete in a global world is incredibly important. So I'm Irish, I grew up in Ireland. In the 70s and 80s, Ireland was a third world country. And what it actually did was it focused on investing in college and university for everybody. And that was how it managed to make itself a hub for digital innovation in Europe. And I think it's not unique in that regard. There are many countries that have done similar things, but investing in people it's a key pillar to success. Insofar as competition and collaboration, these are interesting things, particularly in an AI world. I think that we at Tools for Humanity, our goal is to effectively build products and services that will enable humans in an AI world. And so what we see is that we think that there will likely be a few players that dominate this space, and it's sort of an inevitability of resources, access to computing power, access to the best engineers. But the question becomes then, how do we build all of the services around AI? Because AI won't stand on its own. It will be built into everything that we do. And so how do we enable those tools and services? How do we build the education and the resources to ensure that people aren't left behind as they use those services? And that's sort of the intersection of where we think about success, particularly in developing worlds. So we have launched in a number of countries in Southeast Asia. And what we try to do is we try to look at the markets where we think that the people will benefit from the technology, but also be able to do things creatively with it that we haven't yet been able to think of. And we look at Indonesia as a prime example of that. As other esteemed colleagues have mentioned, it's one of the most online countries and digitized countries in the world. People spend an enormous amount of time interacting with platforms, but there are good and bad that come with that. People spending time on social media. I used to work at Twitter, full disclosure. I spent 7 years there, and I know the good and the bad that can come with these technologies. So it's going to be incredibly important that we spend time educating folks and providing them tools to navigate the world as it changes, particularly as AI advances. Today, many of the things that we take for granted in an online world are based around how we trust and interact with each other. But as AI comes online, it's going to be incredibly difficult to trust things. We won't know what is real and what is fake. We won't know whether we're interacting with a human or a computer. And in some cases that will be okay, but in other cases that will cause challenges. And we already see that in a Web 2.0 world. So we don't think about this as competition, we think about this as collaboration. Humanity needs to come together to solve these problems, whether it's in the US, whether it's in Indonesia, whether it's in Europe. And so I think for us, our focus is actually figuring out how industry, government, and society partners together to make sure that we are actively navigating what will be difficult times ahead as it comes to the adoption of these technologies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kiran. Last but not least, Professor Chung.
Hello. First of all, thanks, Padino, for inviting me here. So let me give you a little bit about my background. I'm Chong Ming Tsai from National Cheng Kung University in Taiwan, which means my office is literally 5 minutes from TSMC by walk. So, as a last panelist, the easiest way for me to conclude is I agree all of this said. Then I'm done my job here. But another thing I want to share is what's behind the AI development, which is hardware. Software is important for sure, but if you don't have chips, which is produced by TSMC in the science park in Hsinchu in Taiwan. And so the idea is, so that's the thing I would like to share with you is where is the opportunity for the region in general is under this geopolitical tension in East Asia. So Taiwan, our high-tech industries, they really need to outsource part of this sector abroad. But of course, Southeast Asia is the best destination. It's closer, the cost is lower. So that's the opportunity for all countries in Southeast Asia. And also we have the problem with shortage of land, electricity, water, everything. But we do have the technology. So I would say for the region, the opportunity is to be the places where Taiwanese company would like to come to invest, but that also bring another issue for the countries in South Asia is that may result in the regional competition. So by now you will see 10 countries in South Asia. Malaysia is the leading country in the industry. Singapore is very good too. So who are the rising one? According to the data in 2023, Vietnam, Thailand, and Cambodia. That may be to your surprise, but I have the data on that. So Indonesia, by far, is not on the map of semiconductor industry. But I will take that as an opportunity for you, but also a competition. So what you have here as an advantage is you have very important, the critical minerals. So that's why the Chinese companies come to make batteries here. And a lot of these critical minerals, actually, the same idea, if you don't have infrastructure, if you don't have the minerals, raw materials, even TSMC is good at technology, but there's no way for us to make anything. So I would say the three ideas is important here. First is opportunity for the region, competition for you all 10 countries, and then collaboration is where you can work with other countries. And also, please feel free to let your friends know, come to study in Taiwan. We have the technology, but we don't have the electricity and the land. So you can come to learn the technology and then bring that back to Indonesia to develop the industries. I will just stop here. Thank you.
So I will take you up on that, right? So I will immediately go and talk so that we really use the opportunity
No
that's
problem.
offered.
No
All right.
problem.
Thank you. Well, we already see collaboration happening now on the stage. It's really nice to see. It's really nice. It's really great to hear your insights about the current landscape of AI and also what Indonesia currently stands on. And I believe we all agree that we need to invest in people and know our starting points and who to collaborate with. I would like to first ask the organizers if we have time for one more question, or should we go and invest in people and ask the questions to the audience? Thank you once again, Your Excellency. Thank you. Please give a round of applause. So yeah, we still have time for guided questions. Audience, please think of your questions that you want to ask. So I will open the floor right after this. So first, for Professor Stella Christie, I think we've already talked a lot about investing in people, right? And also just like Her Excellency said earlier about policy, people, and platform. I would like to dig deeper into the actual policies of that. For example, what kind of policies does Prabowo's administration would like to implement in terms of technology transfer that would not only empower the people, ensuring equitable access, but also, ensuring enough safeguarding for vulnerable peoples?
So I think the first thing that we need to know is this mechanism of technology transfer, including giving access to everybody, is critical for any kind of industry. So it is not limited to the AI industry. So if I remember reading the original question, is that when and if we entered the AI and digital market as a country, how do we, how can we actually solve, how can we actually ensure what kind of policy that actually can have this technology transfer? And I say we cannot wait. Already right now, we should be thinking about what are those policies that can allow for technology transfer. And in my short time being in the Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Technology, literally every working day I work until late at night to study this, the policy. And the studying of the policy is very critical, is that not only that you set the goal of what you want to achieve, but you have to really understand on the basis of data what is currently going on. And this is very critical. If we talk about the goals, then the goals are very, very clear. President Prabowo has set the goal very clearly that, that we need to achieve growth that is supported by food security, that is supported by energy security, by security in water resources, and by downstreaming. And in all these areas, it is, we can think about AI or digital tool as a tools that span all this area. So for example, if we just think about food security, if we look at the yield per hectare of our rice, that is very low compared to other neighboring countries. And if we ask, then we must ask ourselves, then why is that the case? Why do we have such a low yield? And the question, and the answer is that because farming is very, very complex, because there are many, many, many parameters. And these parameters span the gamut of, just on the yield of like rice alone, span the gamut of what are the minerals that in the soil of that area, what about the fertilizer, what about the seed themselves, what about the climate, the durations of the time, so in an extremely complex way. And so when you look at such a complex parameter, this is what you know, that the calculation of those complex parameters can actually really help you predict better. What we always feel is that farming is very unpredictable. And this is where a very important example where digital technology can help you to do that calculation. So now we're back into the questions, how can we do that calculations? What kind of policy allows us to do that calculations? Well, the first thing is that we need to know that that is what we want to achieve, okay? And the second thing is that, so that we need that kind of calculation. So we have to identify the area first and foremost. So in the Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Technology, for example, we also just had meeting, starting talks with Ministry of Investment and downstreaming about, from their side, they really know the areas. It's very important. From our sides, we can try to really map out who are the people that can actually give solutions to this potential problem. So we have to map both sides. And the technology transfer can only happen if you study many, many different cases in the world when you have trust between all the parties that are in it. First is there is trust between the government, the researchers, and so this happens either at the institution level or at universities, and also the industry. So all three have to trust each other. And secondly, it has to be done in an efficient manner. So if it involves a long lag time, if there are policies that do not have a strong legal basis that ensures that all three parties benefit equally, then this is going to be a weak thing. So we really have to look at it from all those perspectives. And I think what it is right now, I think one of the strongest point of the policy of President Prabowo is that he really encourages us and really set the standard that we need not only to thinking about the digital technology, but in the governance to actually use a database, a data-driven, evidence-driven policy. And by having that evidence-driven policy, then we can actually really map who really can solve it. Like who among you are actually working about farming, right? Who among you are working on fertilizers? On the AI side or on the soil side? Who among you are actually doing a startup that has to do about thinking about what kind of fertilizers are actually particularly good in, let's say, Nusa Tenggara Timur? And so these are very important to have the data very clearly. I think a lot of the times what happened in our country as well is that we really have the skill, but we haven't mapped out the communications between us about who needs what and who can supply what. And this actually is really the job also of the Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Technology. I think I sometimes say our job from the ministry is that we need to be a very, very good matchmaker. We need to be a very, very good, bona fide dating agency. So then, what's a really good dating agency is that when you come to a dating agency, then even though it's a blind date, if you go to that dating agency, you are very sure that your time is not wasted. That's what we should achieve, actually. So that when the researchers come to us and they say, hey, we have this product, help us find an industry, an off-taker, then we can say, these are the industry that could help you. When the industry come to us and say, we have this problem, can please help us find people who actually can provide solution to this problem, then we can help that. And both parties actually feel that they're actually benefiting from that. And we, of course, benefit from that because that means growth for our country. So this is what we're doing right now as well, using data to be a really well-benefit dating agency for everybody.
Thank you very much, Professor. It sounds like a very tough but fun work, I guess, because, blind dating.
Of course, it's fun to have everybody, these amazing people, to meet with each other, right?
Yes. I'd like to bring more fun by asking Mr. Liu about Singapore is actually it's one of the leading countries in terms of AI in Southeast Asia, right? So building upon the policies and the mechanisms that Professor Stella Christie have mentioned earlier about how Indonesia does it, we would love to know key strategies that Singapore has implemented and how Indonesia can learn and replicate from the key strategies.
Well, I think first and foremost, Singapore is a very, very, very small country. We're a tiny island. And one of the binding constraints that we have is we don't have enough people. And therefore, for us, digital technology or the technology in general has always been a focus because it's a huge multiplier. And of course, AI in particular, because of its wide-ranging use, really helps to augment. In the delivery of healthcare, for example, it really alleviates potentially the doctors, the nurses from taking case histories so they can look after patients a lot more. Or, in terms of the number of workers as far as the service, the manufacturing industry. So for us, it's really about the constraint of manpower and how you can augment that. But here, maybe I also build on the two eminent professors' comments and kind of maybe bring the two together because she's the master matchmaker, which I fully agree. But I think the other professor's point is about matchmaking with who, which is about the industry. And I think maybe for us, in a very similar way, talent is key. They always say in AI, there are only three key things that you need. One, you need data. Two, you need compute. Three, you need talent. And for me, it's very clear talent is the most key. And here it's not just talent from a very academic point of view. It's not just going to school, but it is talent in a way that is applicable. So we try our best in a matchmaking kind of a way that even when you're at university, matchmake you such that you have very deep internships and they actually get you to do real AI projects, for example, or real technical projects, because that's key that when you graduate, you have what we call turnkey skills. We also try our best to matchmake not just people who come out of school, but people who are in their jobs, the workforce in the environment, the incumbents. Likewise, we matchmake them with the industry, which is maybe their own companies, of how they then apply new technology, and we support that, while at the same time train the incumbent workers as far as how do you do this. I was actually very curious, amongst the youngsters here, how many people are actually a computer science or computer science background, or studying computer science background?
Raise your hands if you're a computer science.
2, 3, okay.
Computer science students? Only 2 or 3.
Okay, I actually think the rest of you, so sorry to the computer science students, I actually think the rest of you, the future is bright. Now, why do I say that? Because one of the powers of AI, it is its natural language. And one of the key powers of natural language is that they call it you democratize expertise. You don't need to be a coder. You can just talk to it and it can give you legal advice. Or you can just prompt it and it says, draw me a Tableau spreadsheet. So actually the real value is the people with the domain knowledge. The domain knowledge could be in agriculture, the domain knowledge could be in all these other areas, but it's at that intersection. You need to know enough about how do you then use this AI, and then how do you put the data in place to bring the maximum benefit in that particular domain. So I think that's where the power of AI and digital technology is as far as the future, and I'm nothing against the comm science students because they're still very important, but I think that's where for many of you in the other disciplines, the future is also bright. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Mr. Liu. Yeah, this reminds me of, so I was in the United Nations Tech Envoy last year, working
Amandeep?
Huh?
Amandeep
Yes,
Singh,
with
yes.
Mr. Amandeep. And actually that was one of the main themes that keep being brought up in both the discussion of Global Digital Compact and AI Advisory Body of, having this transfer and having the education and democratizing expertise, like you said. So I would like to ask Mr. Damian, thank you again, Mr. Liu. I would like to ask Mr. Damian about the other theme that was brought up often in the Global Digital Compact discussion, which is about balancing stakeholders' interest and innovation and safety. So one of the members in AI Advisory Body, Ms. Virginia Dignum, actually said that we should not be discussing about balancing innovation and safety because it should go hand in hand. It's like if you make cars, you don't make cars without having the safety belts, right? But then perhaps, of course, the other industries or sectors would think differently. So I would love to know from your intensive expertise about this and also coming from the nonprofit sector, what you think.
It's a really good question, and I think it's a very complicated balance. It's not very simple. That is to say, I'm sure all of you heard over the years there was the old mantra at Facebook when they developed early on. It was move fast and break things, right? And obviously that paid off. They built Facebook. It is a gigantic, amazing, connecting machine. But when one develops quite quickly, one can miss the safeguards that are necessary for sort of ethical and moral implications that can happen with technology. And I think many of the policy discussions that we see in the world today, particularly around AI, center around that concern, right? What will happen? And if we don't have the right guardrails in place, will it take over the world? Will the software eat the world? And I am obviously an optimist. I believe that AI is inherently good and that humans will do great things with it. But I also do believe that we need guardrails. And I think it's incumbent upon both companies and governments to work together to put those in place. I think that's not simple, right? Because I do think that we do run the risk of stymieing innovation too early. And so it's an important balance. But part of that balance has to be having discussions like these today and with governments around the world. And I think Singapore is a great example of this. So for example, IMDA operates a sandbox to test new technologies. And it's to ensure that we're innovating in ways, while we might be pushing the boundary, we're actually testing the limits in safe, or hopefully safe ways. But what's also been interesting about this discussion, and often when we talk about AI, is sort of the AI arms race. How do I, or how do we compete in AI? And I think what's been fascinating, I live in the Bay Area now in San Francisco, and I think there are many people trying to compete in that space, and it's very, very full. And the reality is, it's a little bit like what was just said. It's actually going to be the application of these things that matters. Less about like, am I the one that owns or builds the AI, but how do I build a new cool thing with it? And then how, while I'm building that new cool thing, do I have appropriate safeguards in place? And this is where I actually think places like Indonesia can help lead the way, right? You have a vibrant young community with great minds and a great heritage and great culture. You have an open canvas in front of you to use AI to develop what you want. You have Pak Prabowo and ministers who are supporting innovation, and it's sort of like it's an open field. It's the ideal opportunity to deliver new innovation to the world. And I think you have an opportunity as a result to partner with other ASEAN countries to show what responsible use of technology looks like, responsible regulation for AI. And so I just view this as really an opportunity, not like a negative.
Yes, in fact, ASEAN already has ASEAN AI Guide as well. It was published last year by the ASEAN Secretariat, so I think it's also a step in the right direction, to balance innovation and safety. Thank you, Mr. Yamin Kiran. And Next, I would like to ask Professor Chung about similar question that I asked to Mr. Liu about the key strategies. You've mentioned about Taiwan's situation, its opportunities as well. So what are the key strategies that you think contribute to Taiwan's success in AI industry, and how can Indonesia replicate or adapt these strategies?
First of all, I don't think Taiwan model is replicable because TSMC, they are still, the data is they are still invest 30% of their profit in research and development. At the time, they produce more than 90% of advanced chips in the world. So think about this. The forerunner is still running faster. How can you catch up with him? No way. But that does not mean we have no opportunities here. So I want to echo Ms. Stella about the technology transfer things. Of course, if there was no trust, it's really difficult. But by taking Taiwan the case, we have a very close relationship with the Silicon Valley in Bay Area. So how has this trust been built? Education, right? Taiwanese students went to study in the U.S. and they found a job and they developed their career. In the meanwhile, they brought something back home. So that's something why I encourage you Indonesian students to study in Taiwan. Because we won't say, okay, since you're not Taiwanese, we won't teach you this. No, there's no difference. So you will learn what we teach to our Taiwanese students. And you will work with them and you make a job in TSMC. So one day, either TSMC want to establish a factory here, you will be sent back home, or you just quit and bring something back home with you to create your own company. So another thing is, I would like to echo Mr. Liu is, I think huge population is not only human resource, because you're also the consumers. So Indonesia, with such a huge population, if you have new ideas, you can test, you can do experiment. Once it gets successful, you don't really have to sell it abroad. So that's why China is strong. They have a very big domestic market, and you have it here too. So if you have good ideas, just try it. And you don't really have to make everything fancy, right? If you went to China, everyone uses mobile. The very mistake I made here after arriving Jakarta is I exchanged some cash, which I have nowhere to spend. Then, since you have this very high-level, comprehensive digital payment, so wait a minute, Taiwan, Japan, we are still paying cash. So when I was here, oh my God, everyone was so advanced in these apps and in your cell phone. So that means you can do more from here because you have a lot of people here. They are helping you to make your ideas, your innovation, your products better. So if that will be successful enough, then that will go abroad. So that will become the strengths you have. So I think for those two things, you have a huge population, which means you have huge market potential. And the second thing is, come to study in Taiwan. Sorry, I promoted again. But since we are leading in this industry, so that's why I keep telling you. And we do need more foreign students to join us in Taiwan to make this industry, not for our own good. Now entire world needs chips. So let's make chips together. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure many youths here are now interested to study in Taiwan.
Could I add to that? I think it's a really great question, and we should always ask the question about what are the key ingredients? Why are these other nations actually can achieve what they are today? We may not want to go there. We may choose a different path, but we have to study them. It's very critical. So I know that all of you are very eager to understand the problems. So if I may, there is actually a book that I really enjoy reading. I don't remember the actual title. It could be that the title is chip, but the whole book is about the history of how is that the chip industry becomes as it is now, that it is extremely complex globally. Professor can tell me better than I do, of course, but if, it's not, TSMC is a very much of a global company. A lot of those sources comes. But it didn't start that way. And it's very useful to read these kinds of history of industry and of science. I can share 2 points. The first point, I think, is very critical, that Taiwan used not to have any science and industry. And as I read in the history of the book, is that a couple of the ministers had breakfast every morning, and they sit down together and think about, where should we invest? Here's the money. We have the money, and we need to invest on science and technology, but we don't know which one. Okay, so they form an organization to study about where to invest, and this was very critical. So that means they actually study and map about all kinds of science and technology that is happening in the world right now. Where is it that we can invest? And they came up, and then the organization came up with a list. And among those lists, they also asked, okay, so these are interesting proposals, and which of these proposals that we can actually learn from from other people who are actually willing to teach us? And it is precisely at that point when Bell was actually starting to make the transistor, it was not about to be chips yet. It was not very popular. So they're still very willing to share the technology. And so the Taiwanese government sent people there to study them. Very, very carefully. And I read that they even wrote notes, every single detail, including how in the Bell they actually changed the lamp. What kind of toilets do they have? It's like every single thing. But what I highlight this is that you really need to study, to strategize. You cannot take on everything. This is very clear. Resources are limited. So we have to study and map things first and be very strategic where we want to invest our resources. And careful planning, that it's not a long time, but you have to be very thoughtful about what actually is happening, and not just do things based on free shooting. So that's a very important thing of what happened with the SMC industry. I highly recommend the book.
Thank you. I will look up upon the book, The History of Chips, of Semiconductors. Okay, now it's time to invest in the people and have them, very enthusiastic, I see. Okay, I see that guy with the flashlight, which is a very nice tactic.
Very ingenious.
Wait, before that, I would like to get one more. The lady with the glasses behind standing there? Yes. So 2, okay? Only 2 questions, unfortunately.
Check. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Saidal Muhammad Nor, and I study in Bakri University right now. Apakah saya boleh melanjutkan menggunakan bahasa Indonesia?
Boleh.
Jadi pertanyaan ini saya tujukan kepada Prof. Stella. Ya. Saya setuju dengan pernyataan Prof. Stella bahwa pertanian itu adalah suatu hal yang sangat kompleks. Karena saya berasal dari keluarga petani di pedalaman Kalimantan. Nah, jadi yang waktu di Kalimantan, jangankan teknologi, Bu. Jangankan teknologi, jaringan saja kadang susah. Ya. Saya pernah waktu ke desa-desa itu, tempat keluarga saya harus naik pohon dulu buat nyari internet. Jadi yang ingin saya tanyakan adalah bagaimana strategi Kemendikbud Saintek ke depannya ya untuk mewujudkan yang tadi namanya food securities berbasis teknologi, khususnya di masyarakat pedesaan. Yang ingin saya tanyakan adalah bagaimana strategi jangka pendek ataupun jangka menengah dan panjangnya apakah ada strategi-strategi khusus untuk masyarakat yang tinggal di pedalaman, khususnya di masyarakat pedalaman yang memiliki potensi di bidang pertanian? Seperti itu.
Ya.
Thank you.
Terima kasih. Maaf tadi siapa namanya? Masnya?
Saidal.
Saidal. Yeah, terima kasih Mas Saidal. Just to quickly interpret what Saidal said earlier. So he's now in bachelor's degree in university. He is originally from Kalimantan, where technology, not even getting technology, sometimes surviving in itself is hard. So he was asking Professor Stella about the food security technologies that could benefit the rural community. But before that, perhaps we could pull the questions first. Yes, please.
Yes. Hello everyone, my name is Marofa. I am a refugee from Afghanistan. I am a student and a technology enthusiast. It's great to hear from the experts and the enthusiasts in this room, and I'm happy to be here. So hearing from the experts and enthusiasts, I can't stop myself but to think about this society and a country like Afghanistan, where the socio-political situation make the people to fall behind and to be behind when it comes to technology. So I would like to hear from you as the technology enthusiast. Do you see a society or a world like the movie Divergent, where there is factions, right? Do you see a future or a world where there is factions and countries like Afghanistan where their people might be factionless? Do you see such a world as technology enthusiasts and experts? Thank you.
Thank you. And we are happy to have you here. Sorry, what's your name again? Amarofa. Amarofa. Yeah, we're happy to have you here with us. And yeah, the question from Amarova was about how socio-political the contexts are making a lot of developing countries, including Afghanistan, not having the technology. And do you see whether there is a factionless world as tech experts? So I'd like first to give the floor to Professor Stella Christie.
Thank you for the question. It's a great question. The first thing that we have to remember is that technology is to serve us. So when we talk about any kind of industry, in this case the question is about agricultural industry, the answer is always the same in my mind, that technology can do two things. The first one is that it increases efficiency. The second one is that it will drive growth. So how to actually bring technology to people in remote areas? The concept is no different from how to bring technology to the people in urban areas. Okay? Which is that you need to understand first in what way the technology is going to serve those people, whether they're in remote areas or in urban areas. So the first thing that you have to do is that you must ask the local farmers, the local people themselves, create a truly curated data about what kind of problems are they facing. So this is very important. So you really have to do this study, like actually collected the surveys and the study. And then you can actually use technology like local LLM, large language models, to analyze the answers of the local people about what kind of problems, to map out the problems. So that's the first thing. You need to understand the problem of the local people. And when you understand the problem to the local people, then you map out which of this problem is about inefficiency and which of this problem is about not knowing or a lack of ability to actually grow better. Okay? And once you map this out, is that you realize that you need help. And the best help that you can get is obviously from the local powerhouse. And who is the local powerhouse of innovation? Those are local universities. Okay. So we shouldn't be just going outside and everywhere. We should keep things locally as well. It's important to make growths in that local areas. So then you present it or to work together with the local universities about how to actually answer some of these problems. And if the local universities cannot answer all of these problems, then they can start working with their networks with other universities that may actually have those expertise in the area. But again, it starts with mapping out the problem. So in this regard, since you asked me about what are the policies that the ministry is doing, this is the policy that we're doing. We're very much, again, collecting data about the strength of each university in Indonesia. So you don't have to be good in everything because then you can't really. You do have to have an edge. So what we're doing right now is we're asking, we have amazing resources. We have a lot of universities in Indonesia, and we actually are asking each and every one of them to actually identify what is really their strength and how is that strength is actually maps into the local problem. Okay, so this is the thing that we're doing, and when you map that problem and that solution clearly, then you can think about what is needed in order to make that collaboration happen. Is it funding? Then you start thinking what kind of funding that you need. Can the government provide that funding? Can the industry be involved to provide that funding? So that will be the steps that I would highly recommend. And I'm serious about making this. I got invitations a lot to go to universities, and these days I make it into an SOP that when universities want to invite me, they have to first do a white paper, okay? A white paper of what is their strength. Because what I want is when I go to university, I listen. Not I talk, but I listen. What is it that you are excellent at? So I study, I understand, and also what is it that I can do to push this further? So maybe I can, facilitate with the local government, right? The university is so good at this. Why don't you help? Because it's all going to benefit your countries, right? Because we're here to serve and to listen. So I really do ask this for, so universities want to invite me, please, I'm very happy to come. But you must first make a white paper, very simple. What is the strength of your university? What have you done so far in that area so that I learn about all the amazing strength of our nation? Thank you.
Thank you. And I think this is also a very relevant personal thing to do, knowing what you can do, knowing your strength in order to be able to participate in this global competition. So, Mr. Liu, if you want to tackle any question or add any insight?
Maybe I just take a step for the other question. Technology is generally neutral, and very often technology just reflects the human condition, both its upsides as well as its downsides. We all know, for example, if technology is not quite used correctly, even in, say, social media, you create echo chambers, you create misinformation, you create tribes of people that just kind of listen to each other. They always say, I've made up my mind, don't bother me with the facts. So I think that's one human condition, but technology just makes it more obvious. But there's also the possibility for the other human condition, which is a much more positive one, that the ability to use technology to share, the use technology to be able to be transparent, the ability for data. And I think if that is the way in which we use technology, then I think the world is a much better and a much more seamless place. And I think, again, if I may come back, I'm always very impressed when young people are engaged with such questions because it starts here. And how you think about how you technology then is what's going to happen 10, 20, 30 years down the road. Everything that you do online now, be kind. Make sure that you don't, dox people, for example, because then that sets a precedence for how technology amplifies society and the human condition. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. That was a very powerful message, be kind. And next, Mr. Damien.
I think they're both very complicated questions for different reasons. I think maybe just shortly on the farming one, it's anecdotal, but I think what's even happening in the United States around the use of technology as it relates to food and farming in general, like studies have shown that there will not be enough food or farming to feed the world in the future. That's just the science. And so we will have to rely on technology more to be able to solve those challenges. I think like there's a famous agricultural company, United States agricultural company called John Deere Farming Company. And it has been investing heavily in the use of AI for farming over the last 5 to 6 years. And so much so that they've actually built a facility in San Francisco where they literally are developing technology that can be used for farmers around the world. My belief and my hope is that that sort of technology will proliferate around the world. But I think it's going to be how we use that. But that sort of dovetails then into the second question, which is sort of like, so the World Economic Forum said this year in their 2024 risk report, they said that one of the biggest challenges to the world is sort of like misinformation, disinformation, what's happening in Afghanistan as a result of sort of lack of access to things. And we do live in a world of geopolitical instability. As Padino said this morning when he did his opening remarks, the theme of today is very much about how these smaller nations or middle nations can help solve some of those challenges. I think it's ultimately about how we collaborate together and how we look towards positive ideas and cultivating positive education, positive use of technology, and the great minds in this room that do that together. Ultimately, that will outweigh any of the negative consequences that can come at the world. There will always be some element of that, but it's on the bright minds in this room to make the change for future generations.
Thank you, Mr. Damian. And last but not least, Professor Chung.
I think these are all very good response, but I want to save time for a few more questions because seriously, I feel if they couldn't answer anyone, they will feel very disappointed.
Let me ask the organizers if we have time. They're shaking their heads, unfortunately. Yes.
So then I just say a few words. So this remind me, like, you know, we now use drone on the battlefield. But in the meanwhile, the farmers, they use drone, and the delivery people, they use drone. But drone itself is neutral. Just like we always say, knife is neutral, everything's neutral. It depends on who uses it, in what way. So I think still, if you don't feel it's fair or it was misused, so you are the person who should make change.
Thank you, thank you. Please, yes, have a round of applause for our amazing speakers. Unfortunately, that marks our very insightful discussion. I, again, thank you to our panelists for this very insightful discussion. If I may just summarize quickly. Yes, first, I'd like to reiterate that, again, this is a revolution. The world is changing rapidly. And, of course, we have to invest in people. Be kind and have empathy on how we can help. And technology enables us, the humans. And finally, the importance of strategic collaboration. And let's give another round of applause for the panelists. And I would like to thank the audience. You could be anywhere, not here, I don't know, TikTok scrolling, but you're here, which shows that we are actually optimistic in the AI revolution.
Actually, if I may, I think the real people who need the applause is the audience, really.
Yes.
So, a big round of applause
Give a round of
for
applause for yourself. Thank you. It's been an honor, and I'm your moderator. Thank you, and have fun in the rest of the conference. Thank you.